What is up, guys? Humble Farmer Taiki here, and welcome to this week's edition of Farms of the Week. If you like the content, please like and subscribe, and check out the premium Discord. The link will be in the description below. So, it definitely feels like airdrop season, and I talked about this in last week's video, where teams, they're more incentivized to drop a token sooner rather than later because most tokens have a 1-year cliff. So if the team and investors want to cash out, then it's better to start the timer right away. So they won't be holding illiquid bags when we potentially see the next bear market. And we've seen the Solana ecosystem really well, which I'll talk about later. But I just got this. I'm recording this 12:22 p.m. This came out 12 p.m. where Coinbase is going to list Seam, which is going to be an Aave fork on base chain, and it's going to be airdropped. And I read through this. Unfortunately, if you look at this, 69% goes to the community. Okay, Brian Armstrong, thank you, sir. But only in order for you to be eligible for the airdrop, you had to be an early supporter of the protocol and acquire OG points and other community quests that were hosted on Galaxy. I definitely did not do this. But whatever, right? In my experience, money market tokens, like Aave forks, they just get dumped to oblivion. No one really trusts these protocols over the long run. But I do think that's going to be a pretty good farm and dump opportunity. We've seen a lot of tokens listed on centralized exchanges do really, really well. And it might just be a token that gets traded. But I would expect that this token will just be dumped. And if you look at the actual application, it's literally an Aave fork. I guess you can trust it because Coinbase is putting its name behind it, and if they're literally just forking Aave and just changing the UI, they didn't even change the UI. Then maybe this becomes an interesting farm and dump opportunity. I definitely don't care about this token to buy it, but if the APRs at launch ends up being 200% APR, 300% APR for Ether, then perhaps it's worth just consideration. But let's talk about the main topics. I did want to first address the Solana ecosystem, and the Jito airdrop was actually insane. We had people that staked one Jito Soul, which was under $100, and they received $10,000. And if you did this across multiple wallets, then yeah, you can literally turn $1,000 into $100,000 and still own the underlying asset, which is Jito Soul, or the staked version of Soul. I know people that did this across 10 wallets. Unfortunately, I was too lazy to do this. I don't have that much funds on Solana. I'm still biased towards the EVM ecosystem just because I understand it really well. But this is creating other speculation for other types of airdrops. So let me just talk about the other potential farming / airdrop opportunities. So MarginFi is definitely one. They are probably going to be the leading lending market, a money market on Solana. Right now, you can receive points where you can stake Jito Soul, M Soul, whatever, all these assets, and get these points. And you can go to the points tab here. And look, point systems, I'm kind of tired of all these point systems. It definitely makes sense from a developer perspective. Why give away tokens when you can just give away fake points? Of course, these points will eventually be converted into tokens. But like I mentioned earlier, I think Jito Soul was a really good airdrop just because liquid staking derivatives, and they also have the tangential narrative around flash bots, around MEV and whatnot. But money market tokens typically just get dumped on. The Jito airdrop was only good just because no one farmed it. So there was a limited amount of tokens that got distributed to a very small amount of people. But I can definitely see, in the future, more and more people deposit money into MarginFi, which might dilute the potential for these airdrops. And if you add the fact that money market tokens aren't going to be worth that much on average, then maybe, most of the Solana airdrop opportunities have mostly passed. There's also Camino, which is another money market. I think they allow LP tokens as collateral, which is kind of cool. I talked to the team. The devs started Hubble Finance, which was kind of like a maker DAO fork. Back in 2020 and whatnot. But I think they're focusing their time on this. It could be worth, right? If you own Sol, you might as well just lend it out, maybe borrow some USDC, enter some farms. You can loop it elsewhere. But I think it's pretty cool. But I think probably the only airdrop farm that I think is probably worth your time on Solana ecosystem. And I'm not saying that MarginFi at Camino is not going to be worth it, but if you I really doubt that it's going to be the size of the Jito airdrop. I think it's very, very unlikely. I think the one airdrop that has a lot of potential is Tensor, which is a Blur fork essentially on Solana. they took away a lot of market share away from Magic Eden. And Magic Eden raised at like $1 billion valuation. But all those VCs are probably just like really, really sad. And they're probably trying to invest into, Tensor right now. And we've seen NFT prices for the Solana ecosystem do really well. For example, Mad Lads. I think this is going to be the blue chip on the Solana ecosystem. I run HFA Research. We wrote about this back in August. NFTs on Solana. When we posted this, it was like, what are you doing, Taiki? Like, why are you talking about Solana, like NFTs? But I mean, August 7th, this thing was at 60 to 70 SOL, and now it's basically at 200 SOL. So you 3x'd your SOL stack, and Solana also basically like 4 or 5x'd in the meantime. Do I own any? No. But I think that if you want to farm Tensor, you probably should be bidding like the blue chip NFTs. And I think Mad Lads is one of it. They're trying to build an exchange called Backpack, and they also innovated with this thing called XNFTs, which are executable NFTs. Which I mean, I don't really know like what the actual value prop of that is yet. But who knows? Maybe it's worth considering. And I'll provide a link to the description for this research report if you are ever so interested. But let's talk about the main topic. And I think this is kind of interesting because I don't really think people are talking about this. And I haven't started doing this, but I definitely will by end of year. And it's around Celestia. So Celestia, if you look at the token, I mean, it's been parabolic. It launched at roughly $2 in November, and now it's at $10. A little 5x on a pretty large coin. And today, like markets, I mean, it's down, but Celestia is up. You can kind of see like this big wick here. I mean, Celestia is pretty crazy. I definitely wish I owned some. I definitely wish I started this airdrop farming operation, which I'll talk about. But going back to this, No Sleep John, I think, is a pretty interesting account when it comes to the modular ecosystem. He works for Hyperlane, which I think is building on top of Celestia. So I guess it's in his interest to create Celestia hype. But he's been talking about this idea of a TIA airdrop season. There's like only a few people talking about this, and if you think about like really large airdrops, if everyone's farming an airdrop, it's very unlikely that that airdrop is going to be worth that much. A few exceptions for things like Arbitrum and whatnot, right? Like if you farmed like Arbitrum, you could have made a bunch of money, right? Like I definitely like benefited a lot from it. But I think I guess by making this video, it's going to kind of dilute this idea. But hey, I'm a humble farmer. We all look for humble opportunities. And let's talk about this idea. So if you remember back in last bull market, there was this idea that if you stake Atom, you're going to get a bunch of airdrops, right? And Atom is an asset that has very little value, or at least right now. There's a lot of drama when it comes to governance, the community. It's a pretty hard asset to own right now, and it is down from its all-time high, which is like roughly $45. But if you take into account all the airdrops you could have received in the last bull market, I'm pretty sure that all Atom stakers, I mean, if you got in early enough, are up. Obviously, if you staked at the Pico top 10, it's very unlikely. But in the last bull market, if you stick to Atom, you see all these airdrops like Osmosis, Juno, and I mean, this is only a little bit. There are other airdrops like Stride, Archway. I mean, there's like a lot of other airdrops, right? But basically, if you just staked Atom and held onto it, you could like just receive free tokens. And for tokens like Juno, of course, Juno is in the dumpsters right now at like under 50 cents. But if you imagine, right, like you just hold Atom, stake Atom, Atom is going up, you get the Juno airdrop, and it immediately like 5x's, from like $9 to $45. It's crazy how it's like at like 47 cents right now. But that's besides the point. Anyone that staked Atom and remained like high conviction in Atom and started, I guess, creating like 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 different wallets that held like 15, 20, 30 Atom, which isn't that much money in the grand scheme of things, they could have like just made $1 million. Like, I'm not even joking. Obviously, these people had to be patient to receive these airdrops. But I think, if you stake Atom, you still get a bunch of airdrops. For example, Atom stakers received the Celestia airdrop, and I don't think anyone is, sad about, holding Atom down, that much when you receive a token that looks like this. But if you look at Celestia, let's try to understand like what Celestia is. And look, I'm not going to pretend to be an expert when it comes to Celestia, but there's always this argument and I guess there's this narrative argument around modular slash the monolithic thesis. And the modular thesis similar to Ethereum, where you scale the base chain with like Ethereum mainnet via L2s and L3s. And then there's also the monolithic narrative, which is like what Solana is trying to do, where instead of fragmenting liquidity across various L2s and app chains, let's try to build everything on one chain. And if it can actually scale, if one chain can actually scale, then that should be a better solution, at least on paper. Can it actually work? Who knows? But part of Solana's appreciation are investors betting on that thesis, and maybe Solana is a good hedge against Ethereum in the upcoming cycle. I have no idea. I'm just thinking about these things in terms of probabilities. But Celestia is, and I'll link this in the description below, but it's a new scaling tech, and it's also trying to, ride the modular narrative. And like I mentioned, I'm not going to try to be an expert. Without getting too technical, Celestia introduces the concept of modular blockchains. So instead of one blockchain doing everything, modular blockchains specialize and optimize to perform a given function. And they're trying to become the data availability layer, and it's going to make it cheaper and easier for new developers to spin up new blockchains and new rollups. Celestia also scales with the number of users, and it could be an attractive value proposition if you're a developer trying to create a new rollup, for example. Celestia's utility token, rollups need to buy TIA and stake it essentially to pay to use the Celestia data availability layer. It's a proof of stake network. Like I mentioned, it bootstraps new rollups, and then it should also allow for potential airdrops. So let's talk about that. So if you look at the Celestia ecosystem on their main website, and you look at the all section, there's all these, apps, right? But if you look at any L1 website, they're going to claim that they have hundreds of partnerships. But these partnerships is like kind of like fake, right? It's like, like our new L1 partners with Chainlink to use their oracles. Cool, right? But everyone does that. It's not really like a real partnership. But Celestia, I think, is a little different. So, for example, if you look at this section, rollups as a service, all these projects should have a token. And if you look into L1/L2 tokens, they're usually worth a decent amount. And Eclipse, for example, is interesting. I'm trying to load up the website here. For example, it's not loading, but yeah, there you go. So I believe, so they're trying to become Ethereum's fastest layer 2, powered by the Solana virtual machine. Of course, we kind of have to wait until this thing actually launches to see how viable this option is. But this is a bunch of buzzwords. They have a bunch of VCs, investors that's gonna try to make it a thing. Surely, this thing will probably launch at, let's say, a $3 billion FDV when it comes out. It's going to have a token, and it uses Celestia, and it's probably going to drop a token. And part of the token might go to Celestia stakers. You can say the same thing about things like Caldera, and I'm not going to go through every single application on here, but going back to this thing, go back to the alt tab. There's all these networks, and if you look at Manta Network, for example, actually let's just not click, but Manta Network, they raised at a $500 million valuation, and I heard that it was confirmed that they're gonna give away some of the token to TS stakers. So if you think about it, right? Think about 2024, 2025. TS stakers should receive a decent amount of airdrops. So from a humble farmer's perspective, how do we capitalize? And of course, we don't really know, okay? Like the devs end up, figuring out how the tokens are distributed, and I have no insider information. But it's all about thinking in probabilities and trying to set up yourself for success. And if I think about it, okay, I think it's definitely plus EV. For your money spent, or actually, I'm not going to talk about it from your perspective, right? I can only talk about it from my perspective, because I'm literally a person on the internet wearing a farmer's hat, holding a rake, making videos on the internet. Definitely not financial advice, right? But okay, in the next couple of years, TS stakers should receive the airdrops. How do we maximize that opportunity? And if you look at past airdrops for Cosmos stakers, and look, I don't even know anything about this token, but Atom stake, like if you staked at least 25 Atom, or held 150 Atom on your wallet, then you receive this OCH token airdrop. For Stride, I believe if you held, so if you held 10, if you look at the Cosmos Hub here, right? If you held 10 Atom, I believe if you staked 10 Atom, you received this airdrop. And then for Archway, I believe, if you staked at least 25 Atom, you received these airdrops. And of course, the more tokens you staked, the more tokens you receive. But I think developer and like teams should, err towards the side of giving away, or I guess distributing more tokens towards smaller wallets, because if you give most of your tokens to whales, then maybe that's not great for decentralization. It's really hard for developers to prevent Sybil attacks for like by humble farmers like you and I, but I think it makes sense for, let's say, at least stake 25 TIA across multiple wallets, and maybe that's going to be a good benchmark, a good starting point. And at current prices, that's going to be roughly $250. But let's say, you want to stake 30 TIA across different wallets, because you want to be safe, right? Like, it's better to be safe than sorry. Maybe it makes sense for, like people to buy TIA across centralized exchanges, or, like dexes like Osmosis, and just spin up 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, even 100 wallets if you have the time and the money to do so. Like whatever makes sense for you. Of course, there's opportunity cost because yes, TIA is up a lot. How much more can it go up? I have no idea. But I'm more thinking about it in terms of, okay, how much airdrops can I actually receive? And if I like when I'm talking about this airdrop farming operation, like I don't really care about the price of TIA. I only care about maximizing the amount of wallets that receive future airdrops that go into TIA stakers. And like I said, I'm not doing this yet, but I do want to do this by end of year because there's a decent chance that these teams, maybe they take a cutoff, right, like a snapshot of TIA stakers on December 31st or something. I have no idea, but I will definitely do this. Maybe I'll do like 100 wallets if I have the time. Actually, that's a lot of work. Maybe I'm too lazy for that. And that's going to be a significant opportunity cost of capital. But at least 10 wallets, right? $300 across 10 wallets, that's like $3,000. It's not chump change, but I definitely think that if you just think about the EV, right? Expected value. So like whatever like the payoff is, multiply that by like the probability of all these outcomes happening. I mean, even if TIA goes to zero and I lose $3,000, like I think the EV and like the decision making that I like in this decision making process, I think is definitely a plus EV one. So definitely think it's worth considering. There's a lot of demand for airdrop farming videos, which is understandable. And I think Solana ecosystem, I think most of the opportunities have passed. I talked about L2 farming opportunities in last week's video, which I think is pretty useful. But I think this time around, like maybe farming seamless, like whatever this token ends up doing, could be interesting. Maybe you farm and dump. You farm this thing on chain, then you dump it on people buying this token on centralized exchanges. Cool. Okay. That's my counterparty. That's great. But if you want to talk about, I guess, positive sum thinking games, then like starting or at least thinking about a TIA staking airdrop farming operation probably makes sense. And it's definitely something I will do. Ideally, I do it when TIA goes down, but to be honest, given the nature and given like the EV of like this airdrop farming operation, even if TIA is trading at $50, I'll probably start to do it, right? I'll do it regardless. And you can go to the Kepler dashboard. Kepler is like the Cosmos wallet, and Celestia, you can stake it for 17% APR, which comes from token inflation. And if you're gonna stake it with someone, you should stake it with someone that first of all, like doesn't take like 100% commissions. Okay, like what the hell is that? You also shouldn't stake with centralized exchanges like Coinbase, because I forget what it was, but maybe it was these wallets. But anyways, like most tokens, they don't really give away tokens to centralized exchanges. So tokens that were delegated, didn't get the token, or sorry, if you staked with Coinbase, Binance, or Kraken, you didn't get it. just because, well, like decentralization concerns. Well, like, I mean, sure, like that kind of makes sense. So who would I stake with? I mean, to be honest, you have to do your own research. Maybe stake across multiple um, node operators. But like I think it's definitely worth your time if you kind of agree with, but the potential for TI airdrop season. Probably going to be next year. Probably not going to be an instant payoff, right? So no instant gratification here. Maybe if TIA goes up and whatnot. But hey, just be aware of it. Just keep it in your radar. And there's a chance that a year or two from now, we go back on this video and be like, wow, humble farmers that started the Celestia airdrop farming staking operation, that was smart money, right? That was smart money. And you definitely want to set your future self up for success, okay? Because we're all living in the present, the now, and we only know what happens, or we only know what happened in the past, and what we're living in right now, and there's uncertainty around the future. But if you're trading, investing, like doing whatever, we're all trying to set our future selves for success. So I always think about, okay, future Taiki, like how do I make future Taiki proud? Okay, and you should ask yourself the question: if your name is Bobby, right? Like my name is Bobby. Like how do I make future Bobby proud? And like just start thinking about these things because there's a lot of opportunities right now. Like just buying tokens for capital appreciation, I suppose. But there's also other opportunities in the form of airdrop farming. So thank you guys for watching. So hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next week for a new edition of Farmers of the Week. Bye bye. And check out the premium Discord. Link will be in the description below for Humble Farmer Army research. I've been running this for over 2 years. Yeah, check it out if you're interested. Like no issues if not. Okay, so thank you guys for bye bye.